Hi, scholars! This is Miss Mailer, and today we're going to be reading a story a little bit differently. So today, scholars, instead of you seeing me, you are going to be seeing this book. That way, while we're reading, you'll be able to see the words and the pictures much better. So, let's get started. Scholars, we have been learning about the author and the illustrator. As you've already talked about before we started this video, we know that the person who writes the words is called the author. So scholars, I'm going to say part of that sentence, and then I want you to say the other part of that sentence. Okay? Are you ready? Here we go. The person who writes the words is called the author. The person who writes the words is called the author. Great job. Let's do one more. Here we go. The person who draws the pictures is called the illustrator. The person who draws the pictures is called the illustrator. Great job, scholars. Let's look at the front cover of our story. The title of our book today is called The Girl Who Never Made Mistakes. The authors of this story are Mark Pett and Gary Rubenstein. And the illustrator of this story is also Mark Pett. So Mark Pett wrote the story and drew the illustrations. Scholars, sometimes the author and the illustrator are the same person. So, this book is about a girl who never makes mistakes until one day she makes a mistake. While we read today, I want you to think about how the author's words and the illustrator's pictures help us understand the story. Okay, scholars, here we go. The Girl Who Never Made Mistakes by Mark Pett and Gary Rubenstein. Illustrated by Mark Pett. There's a little bit of a glare. That's okay. For Beatrice Bottomwell, Friday began like any other day. She matched her socks, and of course, she put her shoes on the proper feet. She remembered to feed her hamster, Humbert, his favorite food, broccoli. And when she made a sandwich for her brother, Carl's lunch, she used exactly the same amount of peanut butter and jelly. When she stepped outside to greet her fans, she didn't forget to say good morning and thank you. They asked if she made her bed. She had. They asked if she forgot to do her math homework. Nope. What about tonight's talent show? They asked. I'm ready, said Beatrice with a smile. After all, her juggling act had won 3 years in a row. Most people in town didn't even know Beatrice's name. They just called her the girl who never made mistakes. Because for as long as anyone could remember, she never did. Unlike Beatrice, Carl made lots of mistakes. He ate his crayons, and he drew with his green beans. He danced with his hands and played piano with his feet. Carl loved to make mistakes. So, scholars, let's back up here for just a minute. Let's look at this page. I think the illustrator is thinking about the author's words. On this page, the author wrote, they just called her the girl who never makes mistakes. Because for as long as anybody could remember, she never did. When I look at this picture, I see Beatrice making a tower of blocks and it doesn't fall over. And I see her juggling balls without dropping any. But when I look at the next page, I see her brother drawing with food instead of crayons and playing the piano with his feet. Scholars, the author wrote that the girl who never made mistakes and pictures to show the girl not making mistakes right here. So I know the author and illustrator are working together to make the words in the pictures match. Scholars, let's keep reading. At school, Beatrice was on a cooking team with her two best friends, Millie and Sarah. To make their giant rhubarb muffins, they needed 4 eggs. Beatrice went to the refrigerator and carefully chose the biggest, eggiest eggs she could find. But on the way back, her legs slipped out from under her. The eggs went flying. Beatrice was about to make her first mistake. But she didn't. That was close, thought Beatrice. Sorry, Beatrice, I dropped a piece of rhubarb. Don't mention it, eh? For the rest of the school day, Beatrice could not stop thinking about her almost mistake. On her way home from school, Beatrice watched Millie and Sarah ice skating in the park. Come join us, said Millie. It's fun, said Sarah. Beatrice watched them slip and slide on the frozen pond. Millie and Sarah laughed as they wobbled on ice. No thanks, said Beatrice. Scholars, let's stop here. Why didn't Beatrice want to go ice skating? If you know the answer to that question, raise your hand and your teacher will ask you to share. Teachers, go ahead and pause the video. Scholars, you're right. Beatrice didn't want to go ice skating because she was scared of making a mistake. Beatrice saw her friend fall on the ice and didn't want to fall like her friend. Let's keep reading. At supper, Beatrice barely touched her food. Is everything all right, kiddo? Asked her father. I'm worried I'll mess up tonight, said Beatrice, and everyone will be watching. Worry? You don't make mistakes, he said with a smile. Beatrice tried to smile too. After supper, Beatrice got ready for the talent show. First, she woke up Humbert from his nap. Next, she got the salt shaker from the kitchen table. And finally, she filled a balloon with water. The school auditorium was packed. Beatrice felt her stomach jumping around inside her. I wonder if she was feeling nervous, scholars. Beatrice waited for her juggling music to begin. That's her. That's the girl who never makes mistakes, said a woman. Oh, we know she'll be perfect, said a man. When the music started, she tossed Humbert into the air. Next, she added the salt shaker, and finally, the water balloon. Beatrice didn't miss a beat. The crowd clapped with delight. But Beatrice noticed something odd about the salt shaker. The specks falling out of it were not white. Uh-oh. Scholars, I wonder what's in the salt shaker. Let's keep reading. Achoo! Humbert was so surprised by his sneeze that he grabbed the water balloon with his claws. Kablooey! Humbert's pieces of water balloon and the pepper rained down on Beatrice. For the first time in as long as anyone could remember, Beatrice made a mistake, and it was a big one. The music stopped. Beatrice didn't know what to do. Cry? Run off the stage? The crowd sat stunned. They couldn't believe that the girl who never made mistakes made a mistake. Scholars, let's stop here. Now that Beatrice made a mistake, what do you think she'll do? If you know the answer to that question, or if you have a guess, raise your hand and your teacher will ask you to share. Teachers, now is a good time to pause the video. Scholars, thank you for being brave and sharing your guesses with us. I have a guess too. I think that Beatrice will try again because she has won the talent show before. Let's keep reading. Beatrice looked up at Humbert. He looked back at her. His hamster fur was soaked and speckled with bits of balloon. Beatrice let out a giggle. The giggle grew into a chuckle, and the chuckle became a laugh. The people in the crowd looked at each other and then back at Beatrice. They began to giggle, then chuckle, then finally roar with laughter. Beatrice and the audience laughed until they couldn't remember why they were laughing. Oh man, scholars. Sometimes when Miss Mailer makes mistakes, she'll laugh too because it was so silly. That night, Beatrice slept better than she ever had. Scholars, I have a question for you. Why do you think Beatrice slept so well that night? If you know the answer to that question, raise your hand and your teacher will ask you to share. Teachers, now is a good time to pause the video. Scholars, you're right. Beatrice slept so well because she knew that making mistakes was okay. She made a mistake at the talent show and everything still turned out okay. All right, let's keep reading. In the morning, no fans greeted Beatrice. When she got dressed, Beatrice, for no reason at all, put a polka dot sock on one foot and a plaid sock on the other foot. Beatrice and Carl made sandwiches. This time, they put the peanut butter and the jelly on the outside. They called it an inside-out PB&J. Lunch was messy and delicious. Later, Beatrice found Millie and Sarah skating in the park. They fell a lot and laughed. Now, people no longer call her the girl who never made mistakes. They just call her Beatrice. Wow, and scholars, that's the end of our story. Such a fun story. Now, scholars, I have one more question for you all. But before I ask you that question, or before your teacher asks you that question, we're going to do a quick cheer because sometimes things get hard and we feel nervous that we're going to make mistakes. But guess what? Just like Beatrice, if you make a mistake, it is A-OK. Everyone learns from their mistakes, and mistakes help you grow. So let me show you a cheer that can help you feel better about trying hard things. Scholars, it's hard, but I'm doing it. Up. 1, 2. It's hard, but I'm doing it. It's hard, but I'm doing it. Scholars, if you're ever afraid of making a mistake because something feels hard, you can cheer yourself on with that cheer. All right, now that we've learned our cheer, we have one more question that we have to do. So teachers, go ahead and ask your scholars the accumulating question for today, which is, how did the author and the illustrator work together to help readers understand the story? Scholars, I had so much fun reading with you today. I know you can't see my face, but I'm still here. And I cannot wait to read with you tomorrow. Bye, scholars.